How do you feel about facial recognition technology? California lawmakers are considering legislation that would limit its use by law enforcement.
A bill that would ban agencies from using the software and body cameras is set for a key hearing in a Senate committee tomorrow. It already passed the Assembly last month. News 8's Richard Allen is live downtown tonight with a look at the pros and cons of using this technology. Richard?
And Barbara Lee and Marcella, it's a technology that's already in use here in San Diego County and throughout the country. But right now, some cities are questioning its effectiveness and its impact on civil liberties. In fact, the city of San Francisco has already banned its use, and now state lawmakers are eyeing a partial ban when it comes to body camera footage. It's an expanding technology that's now being used in airports across the country and even on your smartphone. And for more than half a decade, San Diego law enforcement agencies have used facial recognition technology to help catch criminals. But here in California, limits may be placed on how and when that technology can be used. State lawmakers are considering legislation that would bar all California police officers from running facial recognition programs on body-worn cameras. Already, the city of San Francisco passed a ban forbidding the use of this technology in all applications, with backers of the ban pointing to privacy concerns.
This is a system that is too dangerous to deploy because it allows the government to track who we are, where we go, and even who we associate with.
One of the primary issues raised by opponents of facial recognition software, its fallibility. In a recent test of Amazon's facial recognition program carried out by the ACLU, a vocal critic of this technology, scanned images of members of Congress were compared to archived arrest mugshots. 28 legislators were misidentified as documented criminals, including 6 members of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Facial recognition is biased against people of color, and it's often inaccurate.
I would hate to see it banned fully anywhere.
But law enforcement around the country counters that when deployed properly, this technology is one tool out of many that can be used to help keep communities safe.
We need to use it responsibly. There is room for, error there and abuse. And so that's why we have very specific policies that limit how we can use it and why and when.
Now, this proposed state legislation has already passed the state assembly. It now goes up to a Senate committee for a vote tomorrow. And it's also garnering attention on the national level. In fact, federal lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are currently holding hearings on Capitol Hill to discuss how federal agencies are using this technology and whether stricter controls should be adopted. Barbara Lee and Marcella.
Interesting. Thanks, Richard.